Washington, D.C., and actually a very famous speaker in Washington, D.C. But let me be honest with you, it's not the kind of speaking you're thinking about, and let me explain. Now, in a few moments, I want to go through a quick slideshow, just showing you a little bit of what we did as President's Honor Guard and all those different things. But the President's Honor Guard, every branch of the military has an honor guard. And in 1968, Congress decided to take 2 of the branches of the military and to have them do that full time. And so the United States Air Force, which I was part of, we would do the inside of the White House. So any ceremonies that took place inside of the White House, we were in charge. And then you had the United States Marine Corps, and they're in charge of the outside of the White House. That's why you'll see them open up the door and different things like that. And then we have the United States Army, who's in charge of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. And so those are the different areas of the honor guards. And we do everything from carrying the flags to escorting the presidents, anything to make the president look presidential, we do. And so the United States Air Force, the rule is that there has to be 120 at all times. And so they have to keep that number of 120 constantly going. And so when I tried out for the Honor Guard, they were short 12 people. And how they do it in training is that once you're selected to try out for the Honor Guard, you're in groups of 50, and out of the 50, they choose 5 of you. And then they bring in another group of 50, and they'll choose 5, and then another group, and they'll choose 2, with our particular unit, what we were doing. And so I was part of the very first group of 50, and I can just tell you, it's 12 weeks of the hardest training you can possibly think of. In fact, the sergeants tell you from day one, our job is one thing, to get 45 of you to quit. That's what we're paid to do. And out of that, we will choose 5 of you. And so I'll never forget, I'm there, and it's just everything's going, and I'm still in shock that as a Seventh-day Adventist Christian, I'm trying out for the President's Honor Guard. This is not making sense. But I'm just going along with everything. Well, the first week, 7 guys quit. They just said, you know what, send us back to our base. This is just too hard, too crazy. I'm still there. Well, we make it to week number 2. And I will never forget this, that one of the sergeants came in at the end of the training day, and he simply said this: well, if you are lucky enough to be one of the 5 selected, there is one rule that you have to know. And the rule is simply this: you're never allowed to speak to the President of the United States unless he speaks to you first. Because there'll be a lot of times you'll carry his briefcase, you may even have his notes, and the last thing he needs is an airman talking his ear off. Now, do you all understand that? And everyone nodded yes, I nodded yes too. And then I thought about something, and I raised my hand. He looked at me and said, Johnson, what don't you understand about that civil command? I said, well, sir, I was just wondering, well, if the President does talk to us, well, could we ask him a question? Ask him a question? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I took that as a yes. And friends, at the end of the day, I went and got a 3x5 card and a little golf pencil, and I slipped in my little pocket. And every time we would have a break, I would take out that paper and think of a question I would ask the President and write it on it. I'll be in the cafeteria and I would pull it out again. And the guy started teasing me, look, Johnson's writing another question. And all I can tell you, at the end of 1 week, I had 17 questions that I would ask the President if he ever talked to me. And so I made it all the way to week number 3. And at the end of this training day, the same sergeant, he says, there's going to be a fancy banquet down at the Hilton Hotel, and we need someone to open up a door. And there's going to be probably a senator or a congressperson there. Where's that Johnson at? He's always so happy. And so I raised my hand and said, Johnson, you think you can handle that? I said, sure. And so I remember thinking, I've only been in Washington, D.C. for 3 weeks. I'm already going to see a senator or a congressperson. This is so great. So we go down to the Hilton Hotel, and all I can tell you, it was the fanciest thing I had ever seen in my life, and especially coming from Oregon. I'm telling you, it was whoa, evening gown, stars and stripes, and everyone you can imagine was in that room. Now, my job was very simple. They had a stage very similar to this setup. There was a door with kind of black see-through curtain, and all I had to do was stand there by the door, and someone at the very, very back, a Secret Service agent, would give me the signal, and I open up the door and let the congressperson in. And when they're done talking, they'll walk by me and let them out. That's all I had to do. Well, I'm standing there by the door. All of a sudden, a Secret Service agent walks by me, goes on the stage. I don't know if I'm supposed to stop him or not, but he goes up there. He takes the microphone and simply says this: we need everyone to please evacuate the room at this time. Please evacuate the room. So people started standing up and said, ladies, take your purses, a band, to sit your instruments down, let's evacuate the room. So the room emptied out, and then they brought in bomb-sniffing dogs. So I started to leave too. He said, no, Airman, you stay there by that door. Now I'm thinking, fine, this place is about to blow up, and I'm going to be the only one in the whole hotel. I'm not making this, I'm horrified. Dogs are sniffing underneath the tables, and then they did the craziest thing. They started setting up metal detectors at the entrances, just like at the airport. I'm still standing by the door shaking. Well, after about an hour or so, they started having people come back in. They're going through the metal detectors, they're patting them down. They're saying, just take your seats, take your seats. Place fills up. Well, they give me the signal to open up the door, and I'm excited, a senator, a congressperson. Well, I open up the door. It wasn't a senator and it wasn't a congressperson. It was Ronald Reagan. I shouldn't have been near the president. I hadn't even started checking my background yet. And here I am standing next to the President of the United States of America. The Reagan had the color guards behind him with the flags, and I'm looking at him in complete shock. All of a sudden, Reagan looked, and he had a few moments where he had to go on the stage, so he just looked at my name tag, and he simply said, Airman Johnson, how are you doing today? My chance to talk to the President of the United States. 17 questions. It was so bad, the color guard, going to carry the flags behind him, they started saying, that's that Johnson guy, this is going to be good. This is going to be good. So they're almost pressing against the president's back. Their flags are shaking, they're laughing so hard. I look at the president, I simply said, well, Mr. Ronald, it's odd, but I couldn't get my name out of my mouth. It got so bad that Reagan just started looking at my lips move. And then Reagan just starts laughing. You're such a joker. You're a funny guy. Reagan then goes up on the stage, and what had made this such a historical moment, this was his first time back to the Hilton Hotel where he was shot 4 years earlier. And that's why all the security. And he had just decided 2 hours before that he wanted to make a surprise visit. And I'll never forget, he's making this fancy speech. I'm right back where I started from. No one's going to stop me from my agenda. And his hand is in the air. And as his hand was in the air, Reagan kind of glanced over towards his hand. And he looks at me, stops in the middle of his speech, and starts laughing. I'm sorry, I can't look at that Johnson over there. I'm sorry. I caused the President of the United States to mess up in his famous comeback speech. In fact, there's a video called Presidential Bloopers, and you'll see a much younger me, and you'll see me making Reagan mess up in his speech. And so to this very day, they showed that video to different honor guards and Secret Service. This is why you don't talk to the President of the United States. True story. Well, friends, once again, it's an honor for me to be able to be here with you. As I've always said, that this ministry is one of the ministries that has really affected my life throughout the years. And I just think if Elder Bannerman wouldn't have had that conversation with me, because in those days I was all over the map. I was speaking at a youth rally, going back to the White House, doing a ceremony back there, and he was one of the ones who kind of pulled me aside and said, you just need to just see if the Lord is just telling you to do ministry full time. Or if not, finish your military career and then do it. You're just, you're going to burn yourself out. And those were some of the wisest words that he had given me. And then for those who read the book, For His Honor, he wrote the foreword in it for me. And that is always such a blessing. In fact, we were just reading that just the other day when I knew I was coming here, just the relationship I was able to have with him. And so, Terry, thank you. John, thank you so much for just keeping the flame going and just keeping this ministry on fire for the Lord. Thank you. Well, some people ask all the time now, exactly what is the Honor Guard? Now, for years, I used to carry a scrapbook of pictures and just to kind of show people what the Honor Guard and what we do. And my wife one day pulled me aside and said, Terry, all these years, you just take out this scrapbook and people gather around. Why don't you just simply put it on a PowerPoint? I said, oh, I never thought of that. And so you have the gift of being able to see some of the White House photographs. And let me just let you know this. There's a couple unique things about me and the Honor Guard. First, I was the only ever, at that time, practicing Seventh-day Adventist ever in the President's Honor Guard's history. The second thing is that I went on to become the longest serving honor guard in honor guard history. No one has even come close. 3 different presidents that I was able to serve. And then the third thing is, I'm known as the only honor guard that didn't want to be an honor guard. And so you'll hear a little bit about that in a few moments. But let's start off with a word of prayer as we start our little journey here this morning. Dear God, I just hope that people will realize that if you could use Terry Johnson, you can use anyone. Lord, I just pray in a special way that all of us have such a special calling, things to do for you. And Lord, if we still have air in our lungs, that simply means you're not done with us yet. Amen. And so I just pray, Lord, whether a person is 9 or 90, that they will listen to that voice to be used by you. You still have us here on this planet for a reason and for a purpose. And until that is over with, help us to do all that we can to hear your voice and to be able to be used. Amen. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen. Well, it starts here. This is little Terry Johnson. And it was interesting because this was a picture just before I struggled with dyslexia. In fact, one of the things that stands out the most is if you notice something, my tie is messed up. And let me tell you the reason my tie is messed up is I would sometimes get into fights. People would tease me or say something, and I would fight. And so I'll never forget that my mom pulled me aside and said, Terry, if you get one more little tussle at school in the first grade, I don't care if those kids are teasing you, you go tell the teacher, you don't fight them. And I said, okay, so then if you just can't do that anymore. And she listed a bunch of stuff she would take away if I didn't do that. So I agreed, I would not do that. Well, we're getting our pictures taken, and we're in the line, and this one little fella made fun of me or something, and I jumped on him. And teacher comes over and she pulls us apart. And she said, I'm going to call your mom. And I said, please don't, I'll be good, I promise. She says, well, you just better not. So I agreed I would be good. Well, pictures came out a few weeks later, and as you notice, my tie's messed up. And so my mom went to the teacher, why would you let him take a picture with a tie messed up? And she told, the teacher told my mom what happened. And so I got in trouble, and so that's why my tie is messed up on that picture. But what is unique about this picture is that this was a little boy who was struggling from dyslexia who just really thought that God could not use him. How could God use a little fellow like this who can't even read? And I just want you to know that we serve a big God. Amen. A God that can take a little fellow like this and touch him and be able to use him. And that's why I say to everyone, if you're still here, you still have air in your lungs, God can still use you. Amen. Amen. Don't let the enemy think that you're too this, you're too old, you're too young. No. You're here for a reason, and you're here for a purpose. Well, that was me, a very younger me, in my full uniform, and just wanted to give people a chance to see. These are the uniforms. Now, I'm wearing 3 different medals. Each of the medals were given to me by a different president. I have 4 medals now. But they were given to me by different presidents for different things, joint service. But the medal that I love the most is the one on the left-hand side, and that's my good conduct medal. That just meant I went 3 years without getting in trouble, and so that's my favorite medal of all. These are the 3 presidents that I had the privilege of working for, President Ronald Reagan, President George Bush, and then President Bill Clinton. And it was during President Clinton's administration that I was on the White House lawn, and George Vanderbilt and some other ministers, as I've told you, just counseled me. And I literally, can just tell you, I heard the voice of God that said, Terry, go and work with our young people. And so I resigned the White House to become a youth pastor. In fact, the Washington Post wrote an article on it. They were so shocked that someone had left the White House to become a youth pastor. And so, once again, these are the 3 presidents that I work for. This is one of my favorites. A lot of the guys, since I was in the honor guard for so long, what would happen is that they would go on to become Secret Service agents and different things. And so they would send me different gifts. And this is one of the gifts that someone had sent me. And what's unique about this is when Obama and Biden were debating against each other. And so the Secret Service guy thought it'd be fun to have them both sign this for Sergeant Johnson. And so that's how I got that particular gift there. And these, once again, this is a very unique photograph that you won't see that often. These are the presidents all together and getting ready for a photograph. Now, you notice something that's funny is notice that all the presidents are on their mark except for one. Gerald Ford, bless Ford's heart there. And so you will never see this picture anywhere, but they had to go and push Ford to get back on his mark there because he was the only one off. But we love Gerald Ford. I had a chance to be at a couple of private book signings, and this is one of the ones with Jimmy Carter. And normally the honor guards, as you would see, this particular job, I was in charge of the reporters, making sure that they didn't get too close to the president. Now, the unique thing is here is that you can't see on this picture, but I have a .38 revolver on my side there. But let me tell you the secret. There's no bullets in it. In fact, we don't even know if it works or not. And it's more for show than anything there. And so this is one of the dedications of some plane or something we're doing with Ronald Reagan. Every year, the honor guard, we give a photograph that goes into the Oval Office. And so this is one of the ones, I believe this was one of the ones we had taken from President Ronald Reagan from the Oval Office. I also was a narrator. In fact, if you were to go to an event at the White House, what was unique would be that you would wonder how the president knew your name because you'll be in a greeting line. But what will actually happen is that you have a card, you give it to a person, they give it to me, I'm behind the president, and I simply will say, Mr. and Mrs. Jones. And so by the time Mr. and Mr. Jones gets to the president, he says, Mr. Jones, how are you doing today? And they're like, I can't believe the president knew my name. But they didn't know that it was a narrator behind them whispering your name to the president before you got to them. And so I had the privilege of doing that for a little bit there. This is typical things that we do. The president gets off the airplane, those are the honor guards. Different ones, we do a arrival greeting. And also foreign ministers, when they visit, we may send a plane, the president may send a plane to pick them up and then fly them to Andrews Air Force Base, and then we'll do an arrival greeting for them. And this just gives you a chance to see different ones. The Air Force takes over the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier once a month, and we do a ceremony, a reflaying ceremony. And so that's me in the background there. And this is just some more pictures here at Arlington National Cemetery. Now, I was in charge of the burial services. That was my primary responsibility, burial services at Arlington Cemetery for Air Force people of high rank. And then also I was in charge of the escorts at the White House for the different state dinners. And that's actually me with my very first unit there. And just once again showing you just different things, what we do. Now this is a very interesting picture. This was a gift to me by President George Bush. And let me tell you how it came about. Is that they had given out the assignments for his inauguration, and they said they had one person they had a very special assignment for. And everyone was wondering who that one person was going to be. And so they announced it would be Terry Johnson. And all the guys were so mad. I can't believe Johnson, man. How does he get that special assignment? And a lot of my friends are carrying flags and doing different things. And so when it came for the day of the inauguration, I'm wondering what the assignment was going to be. And let me tell you what the assignment was. I had to watch the grandkids of the president during the inauguration inside. And so I literally babysitted the Bush's grandkids. And so inside the room in the Capitol building. And so I didn't get to see the inauguration, so as a gift, President Bush's, they gave me this photograph. And so that's my claim to fame there. We also do the different ceremonies. This was a whole 120 of us marching in some parade. I believe that was in Philadelphia. And people wonder, what do we wear in the in the military? In the wintertime, because we're out in the cold and different things. So I just wanted to show you all a little bit. This is what we would wear during the wintertime. And this is another picture that we took for President Bill Clinton as a gift for the Oval Office. And we also did the fancy of the guns, and once again, the guns had no bullets in it whatsoever. And what's unique here, this is me getting ready for a ceremony. But I would like to say this, it was very interesting what had happened. I went to work at the Pentagon for a year under Caspar Weinberger as a tour guide and setting up the different tours. And so one day I was in my office. It was a big deal at the Pentagon because what had happened is that they had just built this section, a little room called the Hall of Honor, honoring those who received the Medal of Honor. And so all the presidents came in for that ceremony. And so the Pentagon was basically shut down because all the presidents were there. It was a huge ceremony. And so I was in my office, and all of a sudden I get a knock on my door. And this gentleman comes in. He says, we're looking for Sergeant Johnson. And I said, I'm him. He said, well, the president would like to see you, President Bush. I said, the president wants to see me? He said, yes. He said, you must have did something. And I'm horrified now. I'm thinking I'm about to be arrested or something's going to happen. And so I follow him. We go through the hallway. We go down to the room. And sure enough, the presidents are all in there, President Bush. And I see someone whisper to his ear. And President Bush then walks over to this gentleman. And the gentleman's back is kind of facing him. And then President then turned around with the gentleman and said, there he is right there. And then that gentleman turned around and he walked over to me. And that was Desmond Doss. And this is the photograph of that. Desmond Doss had heard that there was a Seventh-day Adventist in the president's honor guard. So he went to the president of the United States and says, I want to meet that guy. And so President Bush said, you go find Sergeant Johnson right now. And so Desmond and I had the chance, this is the actual photograph we had taken that day. And then we became friends for the rest of his life. In fact, when he would go and get ear operations, different things in the D.C. area, he would always say, go get Johnson. And I would go there and sit there with him. He would tell me stories, and it was just a friendship that lasted for many, many years. And I always used to tell him, and I like to say this publicly, that as a Seventh-day Adventist Christian, I would have never been able to do what I did if it wasn't for this man. The reputation that he had left there in the D.C. area, in the White House for Seventh-day Adventists, is unheard of. And so every chance that I get, I like to remind people that there would be no Terry Johnson in the White House if it wasn't for this man there and for him letting God use him very early on. And I truly mean that. So that gives you just a little bit of what I did in the President's Honor Guard. But I'm going to take these next few moments here, and there's a Bible verse that I want to share with you this morning. You've heard it many, many times. And I just want to just read it exactly the way it is. It's Jeremiah 29, verse 11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you, not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. Wow. God has a plan for each and every one of us. Now, people like to ask, now, Terry, how in the world did you get into the honor guard? Well, let me just tell you this, that I originally went into the Air Force to become an assistant to a chaplain. That was going to be my job. I was so excited. But through a computer mix-up, which you're going to hear about in a few moments, I ended up in a very special place. Well, let me just tell you this, is that I had finished basic training. My sergeant had literally become a Christian before my eyes. It was just absolutely unbelievable. And I'll never forget, the very next thing we had to do is that they gave us assignments, and all we had to do was to get on a bus, and the bus would take us to our different training schools. And my training school to be an assistant to a chaplain was in Boulder, Colorado. I'll never forget that. I was so excited. I was going to go to Boulder, Colorado. This is going to be great. I had never been there before. Well, I get on my bus. They told me to get on, and all the buses are going out the gate to go to the airport, and my bus, instead of making a left, it makes a right. And it goes deeper into the Air Force Base. And so I started thinking, this is going to be great. They're going to put us on a military plane to take us to Boulder, Colorado. This is even better than I thought. And the bus stopped in front of a building, and it simply said this on the outside of the building: United States Air Force Police Academy. And I'm thinking, there's no way, what in the world, Police Academy? There has to be a mistake. And then I thought, hey, that's right, they have chaplains in the police force. I'm going to be an assistant chaplain to the police. This is going to be better than I thought. So I'm pumped up and I'm all excited. Well, we get off the bus, and there's around 100 of us. They have us line up in a straight row. A truck pulls up, and they start giving out M16 rifles. Take one, pass it down. Take one, pass it down. And so when it comes to me, I raise my hand and say, stop, 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 stop. And so the sergeant thinks there's something wrong. He runs over and says, what's wrong? What's wrong? I said, oh, no, I'm not going to need this. I'm going to be a chaplain here, so I'm not going to need this gun. He says, you're going to be a what? I said, I'm going to be a chaplain. He starts to laugh. I should have known there was a problem right there. He says, wait right here. Don't leave. Don't leave. Don't leave. He comes back with 5 other sergeants, and he said, tell them what you're going to do here. Say it again. I said, I'm going to be a chaplain. They all started laughing. I said, oh boy. He says, man, you're in police academy. I said, oh, no, I don't even like guns. He said, no, you're in police academy. He said, what's your social security number? I gave it to him. He looked on the paper. No, you're right here. He said, they must have made a mistake. Just step aside. And so they gave up all the rest of the weapons, and then he goes, at the end of the day, he comes back and says, Johnson, there's been a mistake. There's a gentleman by the name of Herbert Johnson, and Herbert Johnson is on his way to Boulder, Colorado, and you're in a Herbert spot. And so the commander said, just stay here, and they'll get it fixed at the end of the week. And all I can tell you, by the end of that week, it was horrible. That I got a nickname very fast. The first nickname they started calling me was Bible Boy, because I started to ask for the Bible. And the second one was Gomer Pop. And you can just imagine. If there was ever a fish out of water, I was that one. And they would use me first in every demonstration. I will never forget this. Every demonstration, they would use me first. And I'll never forget this one particular time. There's a house that they claimed that Daniel Crockett lived in. And they had an empty field. It was a historical house way in the distance of one of our firing ranges. But it was like maybe 300, 200 yards away. And they were demonstrating to us the M203 grenade launcher. And so the guy looks around, where's that Johnson? We want him to demonstrate. And I said, sir, no. I'm a chaplain. I don't even like guns. He says, come on down here, Johnson. We want you to demonstrate. And if you can just imagine in your mind, it was like a driving range. They had markers, 50-yard mark, 100-yard mark, 150. And then the house was like 300. It's just for you to put your target on. And so I'll never forget, I'm down there, and he demonstrated with me. He said, now, Johnson, what I want you to do, we're going to aim for the 50-yard mark. You're going to tilt it up, you're going to fire it, and it's going to go up, and it's going to simply come down. That's all you got to do. So he gets out, and he says, all right, Johnson, go ahead and fire. And all the guys are lined up watching this. I'm thinking, with my luck, this thing is going to go up, and it's going to come back in this little hole with me. So I know he said, aim it for this. I'm going to tilt it down a little bit more. He says, Johnson, go ahead and fire that thing. I said, I'm just going to make sure it really goes away from you. Johnson, I'm going to get down there and fire it with you. So I pull the trigger, and the thing goes off. It hits the front of the Davy Crockett house, blows a historical house front right up, not making this up. Pieces of the house are going up in the air. The sergeants are looking at me in shock. I said, I told you I don't like guns. They still talk about that to this very day. And the next thing was, I'll never forget this, they wanted to have us to demonstrate how we jump off of a roof or something. And so they put a harness type thing on us. And they would look around and say, where's that Johnson? We want him to go first. And so I go up there, and they put the little harness thing on me. And so all you have to do is swing down and all this stuff. And all I can tell you is that as I jumped, I ended up upside down, completely upside down. And instead of hitting the little door, I hit the side of the building, boom, hit the release button. I fall almost 2 stories to the ground. It was like a cartoon, little dust of smoke. Sergeants ran over there, and once they saw I wasn't hurt, they said, Johnson just fell off the house. It's crazy. And friends, I could just tell you story after story. But to make a long story short, after the end of the week, the sergeant came back to me and he said, Johnson, we have some bad news. That the commander said that if Herbert's already been there for a week, he started his training, you've already been here for a week, both of you just stay where you are. This is the only thing we can tell you. If you want to go home, you can do that. And friends, I remember thinking, why would God allow this to happen to me? Here I am, I had started a Bible study group up. It was just different things, but I just want you to know that God was in control. Amen. Even when I didn't understand it. Amen. In fact, I'll say this very last story, is that once you make it to the 2-week mark, what happens is that everyone has to do what they call qualifying. That's basically give you 25 bullets, and all you have to do is shoot 3 bullets on a target that's like 25 yards away, and they just basically want to make sure you can shoot the gun straight. And so I'm there with all my friends, and there's 100 of us there, doing the qualifying. So all I can tell you is that I'm down there, and it's my turn to go, and I fire, I sit it down, and I go over to my friends. I'm talking about our Bible study group and different things, and a voice comes over the loudspeaker and simply says, "This has never happened in Police Academy history, but someone has missed a target altogether." I'm laughing, they're laughing. He said, number 33. I said, 30, that's me. So I go over to the guy and he says, son, this is the craziest thing ever. No one is not, 25 bullets and not one hit the target. He says, man, just go ahead and fire this thing again. So I get down there, and by this time, there's a crowd of people behind me, because this had never happened before. And I'm thinking there, I said, maybe God did this on purpose, because I can tell him about our Bible study class that I have. And so I fired, sit it down, I go back over. That's right, every Wednesday we have a Bible study in the chapel. And this time the guy was laughing so loud you couldn't understand him over the speaker. Number 33, he missed the target again. Everyone starts laughing and clapping. And so I go over to the guy, he says, man, I don't know what is going on. That's 50 bullets, not one of them has ever hit the target. He said, man, your guns, I need a good laugh. Your gun's probably messed. Here, take my gun and go fire again. So they close the whole firing range down. 300 people gather around me as I'm there shooting my next 25 bullets. I missed the target again. 75 bullets. The gentleman gets on the phone, he calls the commander and says, I don't know what to do. And the commander was yelling so loud that the guy was saying, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. Then he hangs up the phone. He says, Johns, I have some bad news. The commander wants you recycled. I said, recycled, and recycle is a bad word in Air Force training because it means you have to go and take a week over again. I said, sir, I can't go back a week. I can't. He said, well, the commander has said that if you can't hit the target, he wants you to go back and start over from day one. And so, friends, that was the hardest thing in my life, that I had to go back in my barracks, pack all my bags up, and all the guys, especially those who are non-Christian, were teasing me. Where's your God at now? Oh, I guess your Bible class doesn't work. And I remember thinking, Lord, why would you allow this to happen? They were laughing and clapping as I left. But friends, let me tell you the miracles of miracles. As a result of me being put back 2 weeks, I was there when the President's Honor Guard came recruiting. If I would have been put back, my unit would have been gone. I wouldn't even been there when they were looking for guys for the White House. So here I was, mad at God, thinking God didn't know what he was doing. God was in control the entire time. Amen. And so that's what I want to leave you here with today. That maybe you face a challenge even right now. From your point of view, it seems impossible. You're praying for that loved one, and it seems like the more you pray, the worse they're getting. Or maybe you have a health concern that I see every day in our hospital systems, and from your point of view, God doesn't know, why is this happening to me? Friends, that is a time for us to trust God even more. Amen. You see, anyone can trust God and everything's going good. We can all praise God. God is great. But how do we do it when we can't see the light at the end of the tunnel? Amen. And so I always look back at that example for me. God knew what he was doing with Terry Johnson. When all the people were saying, where's your God at now? Why would he do this to you? God knew exactly what he was doing. So